Actually, I've been taking notes and I actually have some answers to questions that were posed earlier before I start. And I'm actually going to address your question, Amita, because in the Eastern New York region, actually the Nassau area, they have created a program where they have developed preloaded iPads. And actually, through our region, they have put in a program where they are purchasing these iPads that are just preloaded in a similar way that Shane was explaining to make those available to the panel leaders in the Nassau area. I actually just got off of a text message with the Nassau H&I person. I don't know if she's on right now. But the other question before I get into my presentation, there was Doug from Crutchfield who mentioned whether or not institutions can create a situation where there would be, I know that they used to use the term sunshine letters. People that are old school H&I might be familiar with that. But what that means, it's kind of like these testimonials that are created from other prisons and institutions basically saying that, hey, we've had successful relationships with H&I, and here are like a list of kind of portfolio of letters that can be presented to these other institutions. I wanted to just mention those things before I got into my presentation, and I do have a couple of slides. So I will just say this, I was asked to speak on the topic of creative ways to use technology. And the very first thing that I'm going to say about that is that right now in this COVID pandemic, H&I and public relations now more than ever has to and needs to be attending each other's meetings in concert with each other. Because just as the H&I presenters that spoke before me, they're saying, how am I supposed to do all this follow-up with institutions, calls, and so forth during the day? That's what public relations does. So I'm going to do my share screen so I can get onto my topic. So creative ways to use technology in public relations and H&I service. The first thing in terms of the best practices is how do I create an engaging program for H&I? You know, a lot of us, and if we weren't really super engaged and motivated service people, there's 114 people on this call, but the real question about creative ways to use technology is for the people that are attending, and I know that in the Northeast Zonal Forum, our last meeting, we meet every month on Zoom. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. What we're trying to take a look at right now is how do we create a virtual conference for public relations professionals, and how do I make that engaging? What kind of format is best for that, and how can I measure virtual success with that? So what do I mean by a virtual conference? You know, and there are also people on this call that are doing double duty as delegates, and we've kind of been sitting through these long sessions with the World Service Conference. Here's kind of one of the things that's not being addressed, and it was brought up earlier. So one of the things that you want to do during a virtual conference with professionals is you want to set up kind of a roundtable situation where peers talk to each other and talk about challenges that they're facing, right? Because otherwise, you know, why would they want to show up? So the first thing you may want to do is set up a group, a breakout group. You know, we have the capacity to do breakout rooms and breakout groups. If the first thing that was set up during a virtual conference was to kind of match agencies, and I'm sorry, I spelled seniority wrong here. Match agencies by you know, seniority and the likeliness of these likeness of these agencies and a theme and put them into breakout rooms, you would then have a facilitator that would moderate this conversation and ask questions that would be moderated over a period of time with no more than 10 people in there, and then be able to kind of synthesize some solutions going forward with that. That's one way to visualize that. The second way to do it is to have a panel of keynote speakers, right? And with the panel, to make it, more engaging and interactive, you would have some kind of live video there with images and graphics. If someone knew that they were going to be presenting, they could actually send in advance a very short kind of a text so the people that are showing up could kind of show up with questions, right? And then if it was an event that was happening over a period of time, you could then create these other breakout and networking rooms and opportunities. You could have the 3 leaders and moderators in these rooms. And then you can also provide opportunities to do mailings and information and literature to these people, because that's the other thing that we would be doing in public relations. So ultimately, what we're attempting to do in the Northeast Zonal Forum, we're going to be setting up an ad hoc that's going to take place on Wednesday, May the 6th, where we're going to start talking about how to set up a virtual conference with professionals, right? It's going to be our first meeting to do that. We're going to discuss the theme, and we're going to also discuss in terms of who we might invite and what kind of projects. I guess kind of the link between H&I and public relations on this particular forum is a discussion between corrections and prisons and getting these things in. So one of the things that might actually work out in terms of creative ways to use this technology is to bring these prison wardens and corrections people into a conversation to ask them the best way to bring these things in and to kind of set up a conference that way. The other thing that we've been talking about on the Northeast Zonal Forum is the idea of a pharmacy project. The Northeast Zonal Forum, it spans from Maine all the way down to the middle of Virginia and parts of Pennsylvania. So a lot of these pharmacies, CVS, Rite Aid, they have regional directors. So one of the advantages and creative ways to use a virtual conference would be, for example, to get these different stakeholders in. They're very aware of problems with addiction and overdose, but they're not able to, we can't really do poster drives in there because of those limitations, but to bring them in to try to do some problem solving, to get stickers on the bags, we would have to be vendors in order to do that. So ultimately, those kind of projects are really creative ways to use technology and to set up virtual conferencing with these different kinds of formats. So, I think just like other people mentioned, and I'm just going to wind it down with this, we're in a crisis but opportunity moment. We are in a position where Narcotics Anonymous really could be galvanizing our media attention on Instagram, Twitter, and also creating podcasts that people could subscribe to and listen to these things also. And we're really at a no better time really to get the attention of people in what we're doing in Narcotics Anonymous, and to also make our have these people come in to the conferences and then be able to send our literature out to them and have these peers talk to each other. So, I hope that was that was something useful. But ultimately, my biggest reason for being here is so that H&I, PI, and also outreach, someone mentioned the institutional guide. That was where, outreach, the I between the, PI and H&I, it was between the two I's that outreach was really supposed to do that other work and kind of link those services together. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you so much.